Welcome to News 6 Extra. I'm Christopher Heath. It is Wednesday, November the 5th. We've made it to Hump Day, Kathleen. Getting through the week.
We have.
Weather's fantastic outside yet again. And we had elections last night. That was exciting. Did you stay up and watch any results come in?
You know, I didn't. I stayed up. I tuned in maybe about 6 o'clock to national and just to see kind of, but then I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to go to bed. I have an early wake-up call, so I have to.
You do. You get
bed.
in here very early. I appreciate that. I stayed up way too late. I was watching. Obviously, we got all of our local ones pretty early. I think Orlando, through the Orange County Supervisor of Elections website, they had everything counted and posted by about 7:15, 7:30. So, yeah, I mean, the good thing about the way we do it here in Florida is like you roll into election day with all of the early vote counted and all of the vote by mail that's arrived so far already counted. So on election day, all you basically have to do is once the polls close, they transmit back unofficial data, and you now have your unofficial numbers. It is really fast, and low turnout last night, not great, but anyway, I stayed up watching that, and then of course I pivoted to watching all the national numbers come in and wanted to see, there was a referendum in Kansas I was watching, of course, Virginia and New Jersey, and then I didn't stay up late enough to see if California's proposition would pass, but I assumed it would, and then when I woke up this morning, it passed. So election. So good stuff. And then we have a runoff.
Yes, we have a runoff, and I was also watching the New York City mayor race. That's getting a lot of
intriguing too.
National attention. So that's the one I was keeping an eye on. But I didn't stay up. I decided to sleep instead.
So I know we have Mike Valentian cover some of this coming up, so we'll circle back on that. All right, I mentioned the weather. Let's head it over to David Nazario with a look at the forecast. Here's David.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for watching News 6 Extra at 12:30 this afternoon. I'm meteorologist David Nazario with some weather headlines. I want to get right on over to those immediately, especially because for the week remaining, we've got a little bit of a warming trend going on. The warmer temps are going to return for now. Noticed a little bit of a pause that I have there because our next big cold front, if not the biggest that we've seen so far as we've returned to the fall season, is slated to come through late Monday into your Veterans Day Tuesday. This could also bring with it some below freezing temperatures in some spots. And I want to go ahead and say it'll feel like below freezing temperatures. Now, on average, we're looking at maybe the upper 30s for our northern counties and in the low 40s for many of us across the Florida Peninsula, all the way down as far south as southern Brevard, Osceola, and Polk counties. But because of how aggressive this cold front is forecast to be, we've got a lot of air moving all at once, which means the winds behind it are also going to get cranking as well, which is going to bring those wind chill temperatures down to some areas, maybe even feeling like the upper 20s. Looking at you all up there in Alachua and Marion counties. Now, when you switch over to our water vapor satellite, if you look all the way to the left-hand side, you see that big old push of deep blues moving through the Pac Northwest portions of California, Nevada, the Dakotas, and Montana, Wyoming. That is going to be the major weather system that comes across the United States, ripping off towards the east. That's going to bring us our fairly substantial polar blast, is what I'm calling it, as we move into early next week. But for now, you can see the dry air over Central Florida, keeping the radar void of any significant showers or rainfall. And I do think that's going to be the song and dance we follow for much of November. Here at clickorlando.com, I just wrote an article kind of breaking down what us Floridians can expect for the month of November. Temperatures outside right now, I'm recording this a little early, so it may have warmed up a nudge from where we are right now, but you can see across the board, upper 60s and low 70s for many of us, and that warming trend has started. We're coming in on average 5 to 7 degrees warmer than what we were 24 hours ago yesterday. See the forecast highs topping out in the low 80s for a lot of us with a pretty decent push of humidity, I might add. We've got some easterly winds coming in off the Atlantic, moving across the peninsula, and as a result, that subtropical, if not fully tropical air is trying to make its presence known in Florida once again. Now, Not looking at any major weather players for today, Thursday, Friday, through the weekend. Let's look at next week together. So this is the setup. We're dominated by a very broad area of high pressure ridging responsible for driving our temperatures up. But then if we fast forward the clock and we get into early next week, watch the timestamp at the start or at the top there. This is where we have a deep trough that's going to dig south, extend its reach all the way down to the upper Gulf Coast through the Florida Peninsula, and that's really what's going to help to bring us some bona fide polar air. You can really see that when we switch over to your upper air setup. Look at all the deep shades of blue. There's already a lot of blue everywhere, but look at how it punches through the state of Florida. We're really going to see some very dense cold air come down. And I will also mention, if you look at the white lines there, those are lines of equal pressure. Look at how closely stacked together they are. If you look towards the left-hand side of the screen, kind of a little loosely packed, more spread out between each other, but then over Florida and further north, they become a lot more tightly packed in. That's that wind component. Those are the winds helping to push the cold air down across Florida and then down into the western Atlantic off our coast. So as you go through the next several days, look at the difference here. A little bit of a roller coaster ride created by Chief Meteorologist Candace Campos here. Love this graphic because it really communicates some key takeaways. 80s as we move through the weekend, and then our high temperatures could become our low temperatures, or I should say the highs now could become what our low temperatures look like as of this morning. And then this is what we're looking at for feels like temperatures next week. This is Tuesday morning. Notice up there in Gainesville, Ocala, just below freezing, if not at freezing. Even as far south as Lakeland, Kissimmee, and Orlando coming in the mid-30s, all thanks to that wind component. You look at the wind forecast here, and we're going to be gusting pretty heftily as we go through Monday, looking at the prefrontal winds and then especially right behind when the cold front can pass through overhead. As we get that feature to work further and further toward the east, the winds will begin to relax, but because of how gusty it's going to be immediately after the front, definitely be prepared and want to layer up, especially during the morning hours when you're getting out to school or work. Definitely want to dress the kiddos appropriately because that wind chill could definitely eat at the ears, the nose, the mouth, etc. And we also are going to be starting to trend back into cold and flu season, I might add. Now, where do we go from here? So the temperature trend for the next 7 days looks good, but for the rest of the month, looking at below average rain chances. We're going to be watching that drought monitor closely. And then, believe it or not, after this big push of cold air, Climate Prediction Center and a lot of our weekly models are in full agreement. I'm on board with this as well. We may be looking at a mild second half of November and maybe even a normal, if not above normal in terms of our temperatures for Thanksgiving. Not locked in all the way just yet because obviously there's a far way to go before we get to Thanksgiving, and I'm not trying to rush the time along any further than we already have. This, as we wind out the last now about 25 days of the hurricane season, all is quiet on the tropical front. No tropical activity expected for the next 7 days. Hopefully it'll stay that way. Still a little bit of noise and some model ruckus down there in the Western Caribbean, but looking at the satellite shot right now, there's just really nothing happening. And hopefully with the grand finale that was Melissa, we can say bon voyage to the 2025 hurricane season altogether. You can see Melissa was a Category 5, an unprecedented system, and we may or may not see Nestor, the 14th name on the list. I think 13 names ought to do it for us, especially since we've dodged every bullet that there could be possibly thrown at us for most of us in the United States. We'll close out now with your 7-day forecast. Looking ahead, pretty calm, cool, and crystal clear conditions, and then getting a lot chillier as we get into Monday, Tuesday of next week. Look at how those temperatures really drop off. That roller coaster analogy that was created this morning looks a lot like Shikra at Busch Gardens, to tell you the truth. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
And thank you to David for that. Of course, last night, obviously, as a lot of us were at home getting ready to start watching election returns come in, we started getting notifications and video of a absolutely horrific plane crash in Louisville, Kentucky. A UPS cargo plane bound for Hawaii during takeoff crashed and fiery ball. And we're now finding out the number of people killed in this as well as the number of people injured. And both of those numbers, the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, saying both those numbers, unfortunately, will continue to go up. Tom Hansen has our story.
Horrifying footage shows the moment UPS Flight 2976 en route to Honolulu, Hawaii, takes off Tuesday. Its left wing engulfed in flames. Seconds later, the cargo plane comes crashing down, erupting into a massive ball of fire. Officials say there were 3 crew members on board. And this dashcam video, taken near several businesses, shows the plane tilted on its left side, skidding across the ground, a fiery trail following behind.
There was an accident on departure.
The sheer scale of the devastation was immense as firefighters worked to contain the fast-growing inferno, which ripped through an industrial area south of the airport and grew to the size of a city block.
This is an all-hands-on-deck response.
Kentucky's governor later confirmed the plane was full of about 38,000 gallons of fuel and smashed into at least 2 businesses, a waste management company and an auto parts store.
There was no specifically hazardous cargo on board of the plane that would create an environmental issue for those around the site, but the impact and where it impacted could create those types of situations.
CBS News aviation expert Captain Laura Einsettler.
The question will be for the investigators, what type of maintenance was being done on that left engine beforehand, in the hours beforehand, what type of maintenance history there was.
Now, the UPS facility here is called Worldport. UPS is actually the largest employer in the Louisville metro area with more than 20,000 workers. The company issuing a statement, I want to read it in part. They say they are working with state and local authorities on response efforts, and they halted package sorting operations here last night. Tom Hanson, CBS News, Louisville, Kentucky.
We mentioned at the top of the show, election results came in. We had 3 races. We obviously had a race out in Groveland to replace one of the council members out there, and we had 3 races here in the city of Orlando. Now, all 3 presented a little bit of intrigue. District 1 is one of the fastest growing areas, an area where traffic has been a major concern, also an area where an incumbent was looking to hold on to their seat up against 2 challengers. District 3 had wide open because of a retirement and 5 people running for that seat. Of course, District 5 had what would have been an incumbent there, Regina Hill, who had been suspended by Governor Ron DeSantis. Shan Rose ran and won the interim seat, and of course was running to win the full seat. Shan Rose ultimately wins this one on Tuesday night, getting 52% of the vote, avoiding a possible runoff. Meanwhile, I mentioned District 1. Well, Tom Keene wins that one, beating Jim Gray in that one. That was an interesting one because you saw the political parties getting involved. These are nonpartisan races, by the way, but it's no secret who different people are affiliated with. And you saw the Republican Party and the Democratic Party getting involved in that one. Tom Keene, who is a Democrat, ran for the Florida House and won as a Democrat, won that seat last night. So he ousted incumbent Jim Gray. And then I mentioned District 3 with 5 people. Well, nobody got above 50%. So that means we are headed to December. And as Mike Valenti reports, a runoff.
In a field of 5 candidates, only Roger Chapin and Mira Tana got enough votes to force a runoff in December. At last check, only a dozen votes separate Chapin and Tana in a race to replace outgoing Commissioner Robert Stewart.
Every vote counts. We knew we were going to be in a runoff. We weren't exactly sure with who, but clearly she ran a great campaign, and it's going to be the 2 of us.
We were outraised 3-1. And we still came just neck and neck with the lead candidate here, and we're feeling really good about the runoff.
The residents that I listen to, affordability is top of mind, safety, connectivity in the neighborhoods, walkability, transit.
People care about safe streets. They want to make sure our streets are walkable, bikeable, and they can let their kids run and play. They want public transit. I'm amazed at how much support I've heard for public transit, a public transit system that really works for us.
Both candidates have garnered support from some prominent names in our area. Orange County Sheriff John Mina and Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer were at Chapin's election night party Tuesday, and Congressman Maxwell Frost walked in side by side with Mira Tana. The runoff election is set for December 9th. In the newsroom, Mike Valenti, News 6.
And in case you missed this subtext to what Mike was saying there, this is a proxy fight between 2 different you'd almost call them wings of the Democratic Party. The more of your establishment wing, that's Buddy Dyer and Sheriff Mina, and more of the activist / progressive side of the party. That would be represented, I would argue, by Maxwell Frost, Anna Escamani, and others on the Tana side. So going to be a bit of an interesting runoff as we head towards December. and one more election here in the city. Beautiful. All right, stay with us. On the other side, we'll talk beach security and cloning your pets. That'll be a Kathleen special. She'll love that one. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to News 6 Extra. I am Christopher Heath. Daytona Beach Security. This is an interesting thing that they're trying out there. They got these kind of basically patrols. They're unarmed patrols. They basically observe and report, but they're visible. And they walk around the downtown area near the local shops and businesses. And the idea is just to have the presence out there. You don't necessarily have to have uniformed police, but to have the presence out there. And businesses and residents have all seemed to really embrace this. And so now the city is considering expanding the program. Angie Casada has the story.
I'm your Volusia County community correspondent, Angie Casada, and we're in Daytona Beach, where the big question is, if something works, why change it, right? Well, that's happening here along Beach Street. When we spoke to several business owners and residents when it comes to their feelings about the extra security patrols. And tonight, the city's going to vote on extending this unarmed security program. For months, unarmed security guards have been walking several parts of Daytona Beach's community redevelopment area, focused on Main Street, Beach Street, and the riverfront. They're not police, but they're trained to deter crime, report issues, and build community relationships. Something residents say they appreciate the intention.
I think that the city is revitalizing, and I love to see that they're putting more security in place, because it's a great town and this is a great area, and people want to come and enjoy coming to downtown Daytona Beach and Beach Street and hang out with their family and feel safe.
Tonight, the CRA board will consider extending that program again, approving a third amendment to the contract with First Coast Security. The city says the goal is to keep streets more walkable and family-friendly and support local businesses. Small businesses like the Kale Cafe that have been around for years.
The more presence of security, we've seen a change. I was actually on, I think, maybe a pilot meeting to get the security officers down here, and that worked out really well. I'm in agreement with, just getting more foot traffic or, security.
If approved, the contract would climb to $134,000 and keep the extra patrols going in the CRA area. So again, that meeting is at 6 o'clock tonight at City Hall. Of course, we'll bring you the latest from the meeting on air and over on clickorlando.com. Reporting in Daytona Beach, I'm your Volusia County community correspondent, Angie Casada, News 6.
Well, if we learn nothing from Jurassic Park, nothing bad can come from cloning. Anywho, NFL quarterback, former NFL quarterback and current broadcaster Tom Brady is announcing that he is going to spend $50,000 to clone his late pet, his late dog. And as Jolynn Kent shows us, there's a process out there to get this done, and pet owners apparently are willing to fork over the cash.
I got a call today from the cloning people.
Many of us wish our pets could be with us forever.
It's been 10 months since Diamond Baby ran away. She was like my sister, my best friend.
Paris Hilton cloned her missing Chihuahua in 2023, producing 2 new puppies.
Diamond and Baby.
That same year, our Gail King spoke with Barbara Streisand as they were interrupted by Miss Violet and Miss Scarlet, clones of Streisand's late canine, Samantha.
They're not the same because, as I said, you can't clone a soul. Sammy had her own soul.
And now football legend Tom Brady reveals to People magazine he's done the same, cloning his pit bull mix, Lua, who died in 2023, with biotech company Colossal Biosciences, in which Brady is an investor.
Meet Khaleesi.
Last year, Colossal says it used gene editing and cloning to create 3 pups of an extinct species, the dire wolf. To clone your pet, here's how it works. Your vet takes tissue samples and sends it to the lab. Embryos are created from the cells and implanted into a surrogate dog to carry it to term. According to research at Columbia University, the success rate is only about 20%. Bioethicist Jessica Pierce.
What worries me about cloning is that I feel like it's an industry that steps in and kind of preys on people's grief.
Pierce also said cloning preys on people's fear of losing their animal or their distress at having just lost their pet. We've reached out to Colossal for comment and have not heard back. In the meantime, PETA, the animal rights or advocacy organization, says the best way to honor your lost pet is to recognize that they are not replaceable and to adopt from a local shelter. Jolynn Kent, CBS News, New York.
All right. Kathleen. I know you love your Lucy. I know you love Lucy very much.
I do. I do love Lucy. And the thought of losing her makes me very sad. But I don't know that I would clone her. Because, like Barbara Streisand said, they each have their own soul and their own personality. So if I cloned her and it wasn't the same personality, I may resent that dog.
And I love dogs. I've had I'm on my wife and I are on our second set of dogs since I've become an adult. This would be I had a chocolate lab named Maggie, who I adopted back in my single younger days, and then my wife and I had 2 dogs. We had Betty and Lola. Lola was kind of a bit of a German Shepherd mix, and then Betty was just a classic black lab. And they both passed away. And now we have Lando and we have Rex. And Lando's a black-mouthed cur, and Rex is an ambulatory lunatic. But every dog's a different adventure.
Right.
They're all quirky and they all do strange things. And I think that's what makes them special. And none of us want to admit when we adopt a dog that, we don't get them. We get them for their whole life.
Right.
But we don't get them for our whole life. And that's the tough part. But I think if you go into it and you say, but I'll start a new adventure and I'm not going to forget Maggie, but I can go on the new adventure with Rex and Lando.
Right.
I don't know.
Like, I don't know. And that success rate's only 20%. So, and if we're going to spend $50,000, and then I don't know. I'm more about her personality is what I love. And so you can't replace that. So I don't think I would do it as much as I want to keep her around forever.
Yeah. Now, 2 different things. One, if you could give your dog an injection and they would just stay right at that kind of mid dog level. I don't want puppy. I don't want old dog. I want kind of that mid dog, 4 or 5 year old dog level forever. That I wouldn't be interested in But, PETA, not always agree with PETA, but that is actually really good advice.
Yeah.
The best way you can honor your dog, go down to the shelter and give one of those dogs a nice home.
Yes.
And no cloning cats. No cloning cats.
No, we
need Congress back in session, end of the shutdown. We need federal legislation. Nay, we need a constitutional amendment to ban the cloning of cats.
We have enough cats out there. Like we don't.
Very
we don't need any. We don't need any
very
more.
pro dog, very anti cat. There's a I think it's a New Yorker cartoon, and it's a bunch of dogs sitting around a boardroom having a meeting, and it says, "Not only must dogs succeed, but cats need to suffer." And I was like, yes.
Oh gosh.
So, yeah. Oh yeah, our government's still shut down. That's fun. Longest shutdown in U.S. history.
Yep.
Yay.
It's a new record.
So proud. So proud. I'm sure Jefferson and Hamilton and all of them, John Jay, were just, as they're writing the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers, were hoping that someday this is exactly how it would all play itself out. Just fantastic.
I don't.
Okay. Kathy's like, not touching that one, Chris. All right. So from expensive ways to clone your dogs and cats and keep them in your life forever to a very expensive cup of coffee, we are headed to Dubai for our second Dubai craze. We had the Dubai chocolate, and now we have Dubai coffee. Prices going up to $1,000. Ooh.
Right.
Cafe Serves the Coffee says owners spent $600,000 on the prized coffee beans at auction. Okay, this is the most expensive cup of coffee in the world. It's made from a rare hand-picked bean grown in Panama. Gives it a flavor kind of like honey. And they're going to serve about 400 cups. And then save the rest for Dubai's ruling family. I'm not paying $1,000 for coffee. Not paying $50,000 to clone Rex and Lando.
No.
I'm not paying $1,000 for coffee. I don't care. You know what? You know what also tastes like honey? Honey.
Honey. You can get a lot cheaper, right?
You can get it much cheaper than you can flying to Dubai for $1,000 cup of coffee. This is the point at which we all need to take a hard look in the mirror and say, do we have too many people with too much money and not enough interesting things to do with it that would help out all of us? I'm not arguing for some sort of Marxist redistribution, but you know, if you've got the kind of cash to spend on $1,000 for coffee, maybe just go get a $15 coffee and then give the rest to charity.
Right.
Thoughts?
That is true. I'm too cheap to spend that much money on really anything. So
Right.
I would not do that. And I'm not a coffee drinker, but even if I was, there's no way I would pay that much. I would probably have a hard time paying $5 for a cup of coffee.
There is, I'm going to have to find, it's referenced. You remember the movie The Bucket List?
Yes.
Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson.
Yes.
There's a coffee that's referenced in that, and it's a real coffee, and it's basically it's a very selective bean that you have to get. But how you go about getting it is you basically, the monkeys in South America will eat these coffee beans, and then they pass them through, and those are the beans that you then brew for this. You are eating recycled beans, so to speak. Well, you're not eating them, you're brewing them. But that's what gives it its delicious flavor.
No way. No way. Would I even, no. Just no.
You gotta admire the first people who thought of that. They're like, I just saw this monkey. Now, stay with me. We're gonna go get that monkey's scat, and we're gonna brew it. And later on, you and I are gonna drink this. And it's like, you know what, Dave? That's a great idea. Let's get that done.
No, let's just skip that. Yeah. No, I had not heard that. I didn't remember that from the movie, but I'm intrigued. I'll have to look it up, but there's no way I'm drinking that.
No. Absolutely not. I have one little K cup every morning. That's it for me. I get them whatever's on BOGO when I go to Publix or Winn-Dixie. I'm not spending a ton of cash. 3 Splendas, little non-dairy creamer, and I'm good to go. I don't need $1,000 cup of coffee.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, well, that's been depressing. Okay. I think we've reached the end of this. We had philosophical Chris today, and now we're ending on another rant. It's always good stuff.
Right.
So thank
it's
you,
always
Kathy,
a mixture.
for buckling up for this journey yet again. All right. Thank you, Kathleen, for putting this together. I appreciate it. Of course, thank you to David Nazario for his fantastic weather. And the weather outside is generally amazing. And thank you for watching. We'll be back here at 12:30 tomorrow to do this all over again. Of course, we break news all the time on clickorlando.com, and we'll be on the air today starting at 4 o'clock for News 6 with both reaction to the races from yesterday as well as the latest on recovery efforts from our communities that were hit so hard by the flash flooding 2 weeks ago. So we'll see you on air today at 4, and I'll see you back here tomorrow at 12:30. Have a good one.